Okay, so back in my garage. A wee bit nippy, but not too bad. I've got the plastic off the front end again because I'm still experiencing belt squeal in my car here. It's extremely annoying. I'll start it up and I'll show you what I think is happening, and should be the definitive fix on the belt squeal. Yeah, the exhaust is gone. I've got to fix that as well. That'll be that's another item on the list. So it's not too bad at idle. Actually, of course, while I'm trying to point it out to you, it's not doing it at the moment, but I can assure you off idle it's extremely annoying. The camera can pick it up or not, but the belt tensioner is actually jumping back and forth just a tiny bit. Yeah, I think you can see it now. You can see it. I don't see the camera can see it, but I can see it oscillate. I don't want to get any closer to the belt. So spring is gone in the tensioner, so I'm going to change the tensioner. I've changed that pulley, unfortunately, just a short time ago, but it's the belt tensioner itself. It's not putting adequate tension on the belt, so it's squealing, so I'm going to change it. So simple, pretty straightforward. So here's the front of the timing chain cover itself, and the tensioner, item 5 there. So in the past I've changed just the pulley. This time I'm changing the whole assembly because the car's got nearly, oh, what is it, 285,000 or something like that on it now, ish, plus or minus a wee bit, and the spring is just gone now because it's the belt that's actually slitting. I've changed the belt a number of times and I've still got issue. So a couple of bolts there, we'll torque it up to the spec that it actually mentions, which is, in fact, let's find it on the list here, 18 foot-pounds. So we'll be sure to torque it up to that spec, and straightforward enough. I'll show you the detail in there. We'll remove the belt, remove the 2 bolts, and I'll show you the new assembly and give you the part number. Okay, so once again, to release the tension from the belt tensioner so we can slip the serpentine belt off, just get onto the 14mm bolt that's on the pulley of the tensioner itself, crank it clockwise, and then just flip the belt off. I'm trying to do this one-handed. Hopefully I won't pinch my thumb in the process. And I want to leave, ideally, I'm going to reuse that belt because it's brand new. Ideally, leave the belt routed around all the other pulleys if you can. I'll probably show you the belt routing diagram again at the end of this video. So anyway, that's the tension taken off the belt, of course, and it's a matter of removing the 2 bolts. Tensioner, for the simple reason that it's probably going to be a wee bit difficult to show you the two bolt locations, but I can show you them on the casting here. So this is a Delco product. It's an aftermarket tensioner that I've got, but look at that, made in America. Very nice indeed. Well, at least the box is made in America. That's a joke. So I'll open it up. I'll show you on the casting. Again, like Christmas. Only this is a Christmas present I had to pay for myself, which is fine. 300,000, nearly 300,000 on it. How can you complain? So here's the, it's oriented something like this in the car. So again, 2 bolts, which I also believe are 14mm. I'll correct that in the event that they're not. And yeah, that's it. Pretty straightforward. So I hope you caught the part number on the box there. Again, this is a Delco. I purchased it from Rock Auto. I think it was $85 thereabouts. There's the part number. This is for the 2-liter version of the car. So just briefly, of course the car is up on ramps. It's chalked at the back, and the plastic is removed in order to get access to this in the front. I've done a couple of these videos in the past that'll detail that in more detail. That's why I didn't bother mentioning it in the first place. But in any case, I should have known better to speculate on the size of the bolt here. My bad, again, as my kids would say. It's actually a 12mm bolt, two 12mm bolts, not 14mm as I had stated originally there. So just careful with I think that's a refrigerant line there, and hopefully seems like it's cooperating. Nice. Okay, so that's one, and I don't think I'm going to be able to show you the top one because I'm going to need two hands for that. So anyway, 12mm bolt, 12mm bolt just behind the pulley here on the tensioner itself, and I'll show you on the bench momentarily. So back under here again, I wasn't going to show you the top bolt, but you know what? The top bolt's a wee bit tricky to access. So always in the interest of making things easy, I'm just going to take this bolt off to actually hold the pulley on, because it's actually part of the new one. So I'm going to take that off. So there's a relative position of the two bolts that thread into the timing chain cover, and just pop those two bolts out, 12mm, and that's it. That's all that retains the tensioner in position. Okay, so I said to you I had removed this pulley that goes on the front of the tensioner for clarity, so I could show you the bolts. But the reality is you're definitely going to have to remove it, because you haven't got hope in hell of actually getting this out with that pulley in place, because the crank pulley is there, the alternator is there, and there's actually some structure, and if your car is air conditioned, there's a refrigerant line right there. And this is actually, if you can find the right angle of the dangle to get that out, then you're a better man than me without removing any components here. So what I'm going to do, so I'm going to show you a little trick I learned the first time, and I'll take you topside in a minute here. It's nearly coming out, but it's hitting that clamp. Let's see if I can reposition that clamp. No. If I pop the clamp out there, it just did. Slide it over on the refrigerant line. Get the line out of the way. There we go. So I think if you have the air-conditioned version, you're going to have to pop that clamp. Try not to break it, and because it is in the way as you remove the tensioner, as you see. Here on the bench is the this is not the original pulley because I replaced that a short time ago, but this is the original tensioner, and this is the Delco aftermarket one. So this is actually could be a wee bit beneficial in the sense that it's actually a wee bit smaller, so it might make the installation a wee bit easier. However, one thing that did not impress me at all was actually, if you look closely, I don't know if the camera will pick it up, I hope it will. You see those little nylon bushings in there? Any idea why I put them in there? Now, granted, this is no super high precision fit in the original casting, but this was so sloppy in the hole here that I thought, oh man, I can't leave it like that. I don't like that at all. So I had to actually waste, it didn't take long, I had something I could actually fashion up in a pretty big hurry. Maybe half an hour I wasted, you know, just making up these couple of little bushings to keep this centralized. Now maybe I'm being obsessive. That's a distinct possibility. But I mean, come on, if you're going to make an aftermarket part, Jesus Christ, at least get the mounting lug holes, at least bore them in the same diameter. Is that asking too much? I don't know, maybe it's me. You've heard me bitch enough about aftermarket parts. I'll leave it at that. As long as it's functional, I guess I'm happy in the end. So I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to install this again because of the proximity of the structure and the other components. I may need to take this off, but we'll see. Okay, so I did indeed take the pulley off the face of it again. maybe it's possible to put it in with the pulley actually facing the engine block, but I didn't want to risk getting in and then not be able to get it out. I've done stupid stuff like that in the past, so just take the extra 2 seconds and actually put it in place. So as I showed you on the 2 bolts are in situ there and tightened actually down, snugged up. So as I said, torque spec is 18 foot-pounds. Do not over tighten these. You don't want to snap that bolt up in that location. Be no end to grief. Just snug them up and then ideally torque them to the correct spec. So that's it. So I'll put the pulley back on, and we'll put the belt back on and take it from there. And that's it. So the installation of the belt is just of course the reverse of the removal with respect to swinging the tensioner to the rear of the vehicle and then slipping the belt in place. At the risk of repeating myself, I've already mentioned this in the previous videos I've done. Make sure that the belt is correctly centered and situated on all the ribbing, on all the various pulleys, especially this one. This one's easy to miss. That's the bottom side of the air conditioning compressor you're actually looking at there. So make sure, you can see the belt there. Make sure the belt is perfectly centered on the ribbing. Otherwise, again, you'll be causing yourself grief you really don't need. Okay, so I hope that all makes sense. So by the way, the 2 bolts I put back in, the 2 mounting bolts, were Loctited, as were the central bolt there. So that bolt, there's actually a thrust washer, or a washer, a dimpled washer that actually goes in the bearing, and then the bolt to retain this in the actual tensioner itself, the casting. When you're putting it back, you'll need to of course swing it all the way aft so that it hits the stop, and then you can actually torque it up. The manual doesn't actually show you a torque spec for that particular bolt. However, on the drawing, the idler, there is a torque spec for the idler. It's the same size stud as that is bolt, so I'll leave it to your discretion whether you want to actually use that. Okay, so that's it, all back together, all running, and I've flipped the throttle a few times and I don't hear any belt squeals, so I think I'm finally at the bottom of the issues with the belt tensioner. Ultimately, it was a belt tensioner. I chased a few pulleys. The bearings were gone in them anyway, so it's no big deal that I replaced those earlier. But ultimately, if you've got this many kilometers, as I said, this is code 285, think about changing the entire belt tensioner assembly, because you've got to figure the spring's got to be pretty much knackered by now. Okay, so now if I can only get this exhaust lead sorted. So here's just a shot from the manual showing you the detail with respect to the Serpentine belt routing, just in case you have a slip up, and sometimes it can actually be a wee bit confusing how they actually go back. This one's no too bad, but anyway, top view shows you the 2-litre engine with the air conditioning option. That's actually the air conditioning compressor there. Crank, tensioner itself, alternator, power steering pump, idler, and water pump. The lower view is actually, of course, the same car, minus the air conditioning compressor. So, of course, it's a different belt. Be aware. All right, that's that. Cheers.